The joke slipped out of my mouth at the exact moment my life cracked open, the kind of careless sentence that feels light when you say it, but lands heavy enough to rearrange everything that follows. It was raining outside the cafe, the sky the same dull gray as the disappointment hanging between us, and I laughed softly while saying I could pretend to be her boyfriend. I expected an eye roll, maybe a sarcastic smile. Instead, she looked at me with tired seriousness and said that pretending would require practice because no one would believe it otherwise. In that instant, something shifted, subtle and dangerous, like the quiet click of a door locking behind you. I didn't know it yet, but that joke would walk me straight into the deepest, most honest version of myself, and it would ask more from me than I had ever planned to give. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that small moments can change entire lives, take a second to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, The Kindness Chronicles. Because stories like this only matter when they're shared and felt together. I had always been the reliable extra in other people's stories, the friend who showed up on time, the coworker who stayed late, the shoulder people leaned on when things fell apart. My own life, though, felt like a waiting room where nothing ever really happened. I worked a job that paid the bills but drained the color out of my days, ate dinners alone more often than I admitted, and told myself that stability was the same thing as happiness. She entered that routine quietly, not with fireworks or dramatic music, but with the exhausted grace of someone carrying too much for too long. We met through a mutual friend, bonded over shared sarcasm and the strange comfort of being honest with a near stranger. She was in the middle of family pressure that felt suffocating, expectations that pressed down on her chest every time the phone rang, questions about her life that she didn't have answers for yet. Somewhere between coffee refills and half-finished jokes, the idea formed, half serious and half desperate, that pretending might be easier than explaining. What started as a favor quickly grew complicated. At first, it was practical. Family events, social gatherings, the kind of spaces where being alone invited unwanted scrutiny. I told myself it was harmless, that I was helping someone I cared about, that there were rules and boundaries and an invisible line neither of us would cross. But pretending asks for details, and details ask for effort. We studied each other in quiet moments, learning habits, remembering preferences, building a story that felt convincing enough to survive questions. I noticed how she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous, how her laughter changed when she forgot to be guarded. She noticed how I always stood slightly in front of her in crowds, not to show ownership, but protection. The more believable we became to others, the harder it was to remember what was real and what was borrowed. The challenge wasn't the pretending itself. It was the way it began to feel less like acting and more like revealing parts of ourselves we usually hid. I struggled with the fear that I was crossing an emotional line without permission, that my kindness was turning into attachment, that I was setting myself up for a fall I wouldn't be able to explain to anyone. There were nights I lay awake replaying moments, analyzing smiles, weighing gestures, wondering if I was imagining meaning where there was none. She struggled too, though she rarely said it outright. I could see it in the way her shoulders tensed before family gatherings, in the relief that washed over her face when I showed up, in the quiet gratitude that felt heavier than any spoken promise. As time passed, the stakes grew higher. People believed us. They saw the easy way we moved together, the unspoken understanding, the shared silence that only comes from comfort. Compliments and expectations followed, comments about the future, assumptions that felt too solid for something built on a joke. I felt a growing responsibility, not just to keep the story straight, but to protect her from the disappointment that would come if the truth ever surfaced. At the same time, I was confronting my own emptiness, realizing how much of my life had been lived at arm's length, safe but untouched. Pretending to be someone important to her made me confront how badly I wanted to be important to someone for real. The turning point didn't arrive with a dramatic confession or a single defining moment. It crept in slowly, during ordinary days that felt extraordinary only in hindsight. Grocery shopping together because it was easier than explaining why we were always in the same places. Sitting side by side in silence, comfortable enough not to fill the space with noise. Supporting each other through setbacks that had nothing to do with the act we were putting on. I found myself rooting for her dreams, worrying about her stress, celebrating her small victories as if they were my own. She began to rely on me not just as a shield from questions, but as a source of steadiness in a world that demanded too much from her. Still, fear lingered like a shadow. I was afraid that if I named what I felt, it would shatter what we had, that honesty would cost me the connection I had grown to cherish. She was afraid too, caught between gratitude and confusion, between the comfort of what we shared and the uncertainty of defining it. We were two people walking a narrow bridge, aware that one wrong step could send everything crashing down. The suspense wasn't about whether we would end up together, but whether we would have the courage to stop hiding behind the safety of pretending. Change came through vulnerability, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but demands to be acknowledged. When life threw unexpected challenges at both of us, moments that stripped away the performance and left only raw emotion, we showed up for each other without thinking about roles or expectations. In those moments, there was no audience to convince, no story to maintain, just two people choosing to stay. I realized then that kindness isn't passive, and love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to be present, to risk rejection for the chance at something real. By the time the pretending finally ended, it felt almost irrelevant to label what we had become. The journey had already changed us. I was no longer hiding in the background of my own life, and she was no longer carrying her burdens alone. We had learned that second chances don't always come wrapped in certainty, and that the bravest thing you can do is admit when something matters to you. The joke that started it all had evolved into a truth neither of us could ignore, and in facing it, we found a version of ourselves stronger than before. If this story has stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a time you took a risk, showed kindness, or wished for a second chance, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to The Kindness Chronicles. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and reaching the hearts that need them most.